Good morning, kids. Today we're checking out a brand new video from Dead Meat, the kill count for the 1986 movie Manhunter. Let's hop in and see whose head gets hunted. Nope, that was completely terrible. You know what? I don't have a good pun. Let's just go. If you got a better one, let me know down in the comments below.
Welcome to the Kill Count, where we tally up the victims in all our favorite horror movies and show you how they were made. I'm James A. Janice, and today we're looking at Manhunter, released in 1986. I'll be honest with you right away, this isn't really a horror movie, but it does include the first screen appearance of Dr. Hannibal Lecter, a horror icon, and I said I'd include it when I ran that poll a couple of years ago where the Hannibal series won. At long last, I am honoring the results of that poll, so for the next month, get ready for an extended stay in Hannibal Land. I'll be looking at Manhunter, The Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal, Red Dragon, and Hannibal Rising. I won't be covering the TV show, which I know is great, but I don't think some of you realize how much work TV shows are. The runtime of one season of Hannibal is equivalent to 6 90-minute movies. I don't have that time! Manhunter is adapted from Red Dragon, the first book in Thomas Harris's Hannibal Lecter series. It follows Will Graham, a former FBI agent who comes out of retirement to help catch a serial killer known as the Tooth Fairy. Graham is a criminal profiler with a borderline psychic ability to put himself in the mindset—
I'm sorry, but why would he be called Tooth Fairy? Is he stealing teeth? If that's why, then that's effed up.
Of a killer. But when an overactive imagination isn't enough, he's forced to consult the last criminal he put away, Dr. Hannibal Lecter. This movie is much less known than the mega-hit and multi-Oscar-winning Silence of the Lambs. You may even be surprised to find a different actor playing Hannibal. Instead of Sir Anthony Hopkins, we've got Brian Cox. And if you don't like that, well, you can just fuck off! But it's more than just casting that separates Manhunter from Silence. Stylistically, they're worlds apart, with Manhunter a slow-paced, ruminative, film noirish nightmare. A noirmare! It was written and directed by Michael Mann, an American filmmaker best known for his action films, which include The Insider and friggin' Heat. Manhunter is an early film of his, before his massive hit The Last of the Mohicans, and he infuses it with hard-boiled characters and a synthy soundtrack that fucking rips. It's pulpy as the orange juice I buy. It's Hannibal by way of Miami Vice, which isn't surprising since Mann produced the show and made the feature adaptation in 2006. Honestly, I'm kind of obsessed with Manhunter. I can see why it'd be too slow and lingering for some viewers, but it's beautiful to look at and a delight to listen to. Anyone who enjoys the dreamy, languid feel of something like Mandy should definitely check this out. I love the procedural elements of it, and that we're watching many procedures behind good police work. This is pre-DNA testing, so we get long scenes of gumshoe work like fingerprint matching and spectral analysis. It's kind of like Mindhunter in that sense, showing police work with an incomplete understanding of their subjects.
Hey, there we go.
Call him a psychopath.
We got something.
They don't know what else to call him.
Yeah, because it's 1986 and they're still using DSM-3. Finally, the movie's anchored by fantastic performances from William Peterson as Will Graham and Tom Noonan as the man he's hunting.
What?
Well, Michael Mann's... Another one? Damn it. Another man has become the victim
No, I have a feeling what this is. I'm gonna guess it's Manscaped.
overpriced solutions for male pattern baldness. With each...
Nope, it's Keeps. Damn, I was so close. Alright, well, we're going to take a quick cut and be right back. And with that case closed, we now move on to a bigger case. Manhunter.
Where was I? Oh, yeah. Will Michael Mann's Manhunter manage to manhandle a bunch of kills onto the count? Man, I can't wait to find out.
Oh, so much use of the word man.
The movie begins with a sinister-looking home video, but it ain't Bagul this lady's waking up to. It's a title card! Opening credits give way to a Florida beach where we find retired FBI agent Will Graham. He's joined by his old friend Jack Crawford, who's in charge of the FBI's Behavioral Science Unit. Will has been living a civilian life for years, but Crawford needs him for one last case. It's a familiar trope, but unlike the grizzled loners of Rambo lore and Key and Peele sketches, Will is content in his retirement. He loves hanging out with his son Kevin and having steamy beachside sex with his wife Molly. It's an idyllic family life that nicely sets up Will as a character with a lot to lose. But this latest serial killer, called the Tooth Fairy, kills families that might as well be Will's own. He strikes during full moons, and since another is almost here, Crawford successfully pressures Will into helping them out. His first stop is Atlanta, the site of the most recent murders. Armed with a tape recorder, he ventures upstairs and makes a brilliant discovery.
Wait, hold on. Did you say he hold on, we'll talk after the ad. We're back, and didn't you just say that he attacked on a full moon and it's almost time for another one? Meaning it's almost been an entire month, and yet this crime scene is not even attempted to be cleaned up? I mean, I can understand because it's a crime scene, but that house is just losing value with each day. Yeah, I understand the whole, you gotta keep it the way it is because crime scene evidence, yada yada yada, but still.
Something bad happened here. Specifically, the murders of the Leeds family. We saw Mrs. Leeds waking up in the opening, and now that we're seeing their blood at the crime scene, I'll go ahead and put the entire family on the count. Mr., Mrs., and their 3 young boys, all of whom are seen in video form later on. Will records a VO narrating the grisly details of the murder, and in a rare case, it works when the movie tells instead of shows.
Direction and velocity of bloodstains on east wall indicate arterial spray. Even with his throat cut, Leeds tried to fight because the intruder was moving to the children's room.
He washes the taste of murder out of his mouth and retires to his hotel room, where he goes over the victim's home videos. Will's the kind of guy who can put himself in the mindset of a killer, diving to the creepy depths it takes him.
God, she's lovely, isn't she? It was maddening to have to touch her with rubber gloves on, wasn't it?
He realizes the killer might have taken off his gloves since there was talcum powder found on the scene. Only problem is, the local police didn't find any fingerprints.
Our people swear he wore surgeon's gloves the whole time. They dusted everything.
Oh yeah? Well, maybe they shouldn't be taking orders from someone who's been fingified.
Oh.
The Atlanta PD aren't idiots. They've reconstructed the killer's chompers based on bite marks found on the victims. But Will insists on bringing in another fingerprint specialist, who winds up finding...
Wait. If they've remade the teeth, then shouldn't they be able to track them through, dental records? That's one of the reasons they exist. Never mind.
Finding prints on the victim's eyelids, and Crawford is very proud of Will for showing the locals what's what. Will's no stranger to good detective work. Actor William Peterson is probably best known as Gil Grissom in CSI and CSI Vegas. Meanwhile, Crawford is played by the late Dennis Farina, a guy who always enhances anything he pops up in. Glad man cast him.
The reason we're doing this movie is because this man's out of a job.
Outside the station, Will is founded by Freddie Lowndes, a sleazy journalist who runs a tabloid called The Tattler.
So, how does this guy compare with Lecter, huh? What does he do to him? How's he doing?
Instead of a comment, Will gives an off-the-record beatdown and straight up body slams Lowndes into a car windshield. My God! That they-live level of violence may feel like an overreaction, but during his last case, Freddie Lowndes exploited Will while he was hospitalized. That goofy-looking sleaze snuck into the hospital room and published pictures of Will in a coma. That last case was Hannibal Lecter's, turns out, and since he's short on leads, or, not the family, Will reluctantly visits the man who caused him to retire 3 years ago.
That's the same atrocious aftershave you wore in court 3 years ago.
With the Tooth Fairy weighing heavily on Kilogram's mind, he hopes the good doctor can provide some psycho insight. Not gonna be that easy to get Handy Boy to go along with his plan, though, since he sees through him right away.
At least one thing is that it is kind of good to see he got an upgrade in his cell. Well, in the Manhunter, he's got just the basic ball doors and all that, and yet in Silence of the Lamb, he has the full-on plexiglass, or glass, whatever the hell it is, blocking him from the outside world.
Hey, look at me. You got the old scent back again, didn't you?
Will decides to end their session early, but not before Lecter Roy delivers some cutting remarks.
The reason you caught me, Will, is you're just a lamb. You want the scent? Smell yourself.
Smell you later! Will flees from the unsolicited psychoanalysis by running full speed through the building. I friggin' love these shots of him sprinting back and forth along the walkways, which was filmed at the Richard Myers High Museum of Art in Atlanta. It perfectly conveys the panic attack Will experiences after the visit. While Graham sucks air, the skeezy Freddie Lowndes snaps pictures of him from his car. Will's face is plastered across newsstands in no time, exposing him as working on the case and contacting Hannibal. In his cell, Lecter requests a phone call with his lawyer, but uses the foil wrapping from a stick of gum to hack his phone and reroute the call. He manages to call Will's psychiatrist and sweet-talks the secretary into giving him a home address.
Well, zip that little pointer right on down to the letter G. The name we're looking for, last name Graham, the man the book is supposed to be sent to, and Mr. Will Graham.
Friggin' 80s, man. It was so much easier to be a serial killer. Manhunter's Hannibal Lecter is...
I'm sorry, but that's something. It's literally just... Need to make a phone call, breaks apart phone. Foil from gum reroutes. That logically does not make any sense. I know it's a movie, but still.
Very different than the Hopkins portrayal. It's even spelled different, ending with a K-T-O-R, which this one dude hits pretty hard.
Dr. Lecter.
Haha, friggin' Lector! Better hope he doesn't call in Cyrax to help. The character is played by Brian Cox, last seen on the kill count as Mr. Krieg in Trick or Treat, and now best known for Succession. Cox based his performance on Scottish-American serial killer Peter Manuel, and auditioned with his back turned to the casting agents, since they felt the character's voice would be more important than his appearance. If his Hannibal is jarring to you after knowing the Hopkins version, you've got to remember this is the first time the character ever appeared on screen.
Hannibal Lecter, I did it first.
You know, I was there first.
You are the first
Hopkins
selector.
hams it up in Silence of the Lambs, and even more so in later appearances, after the character had become a full-on horror icon, even kind of a slasher killer. In contrast, Cox's Hannibal is much
maybe.
more human and way less lascivious. You don't see him trying to be creepy like Hopkins. He seems more like a real human being, albeit a messed up one, who's trying to act like a normal person even though he isn't.
Evil, real evil, is something that is so scaringly
True.
normal that it becomes really nasty.
The two portrayals are different enough that they don't have to be compared, but if you twisted my arm, I might say
Oh,
that I
God, I
prefer the
remember
compelling, subdued version from Cox. They filmed the Lecter Graham scenes on this pristine white set, so Cox's subtle facial expressions would stand out more. They spent 3 days on the scenes, a long time for how short they are, but it allowed Cox to get comfortable playing the character. Will travels to Alabama to visit the scene
That's
of the
good,
first
I
murders, the
think.
Jacoby family, but since we never get a bloody crime scene, I'm not gonna put him on the count. He discovers evidence of some stakeout snacking beneath a nearby tree, and when he climbs it, he
Hey.
finds a missing branch and a view that gets him good and riled up.
You saw the lights go out one by one. And after a while, you climbed down and you went into them, didn't you?
Didn't you son of a bitch? You watched them all goddamn day long.
I think Peterson is perfect as the reluctant but determined and very troubled Will Graham. It's not
I'm
easy to sell a
loving this.
character who spends so much time by himself, talking to himself, but he pulls it off. That's chaos theory. It's determined that the branch was cut with a bolt cutter, which is unusual, but before Will
Wait,
can dwell
what?
on that more, a guard at Lecter's asylum
Huh.
finds a lavatory letter in a cell. The TP telegram appears to be written by the Tooth Fairy and includes some cannibal fanboying.
I know that you alone can understand what I am becoming.
He also doesn't appreciate the moniker bestowed upon him.
The Tooth Fairy. What could be more inappropriate?
They don't have the whole letter, though. A torn-off portion
Yeah,
at the
that makes
bottom
sense.
must have included the instructions for Lecter's reply. This is one of many sequences that's great to watch in the movie, but doesn't translate well to the kill count format, which is, of course, why I always say this show is not a substitute for watching the film. They
No,
only
you're
have
right.
4
I wanna
hours to
watch it
analyze
now.
and decrypt this thing without Lecter figuring out that they found it. It's fun to watch them race against the clock using the tools at their disposal, like microscopes, lasers, and wait, Chris Elliott? Oh good, they can take his strong hand. Elliott
Oh.
plays Brian Zeller, a blink and you miss him character in this movie, but one from the books who would have a much larger role in the NBC series Hannibal. Same goes for other glorified background characters here, like Beverly Katz and Will's psychiatrist, Dr. Sidney Bloom. The latter is
Hey.
played by Paul Perry, who was the puzzle-averse Edwards in Hellraiser Bloodlines. They deduce that Lecter will post his response in the personal ad section of the Tadler. It's a promising lead, but the code is too tough to crack, so they can't figure out what the Tooth Fairy's asking for. Since they don't want to tip off either killer, Will decides to let Hannibal's response run and risk the consequences.
And what if it encourages the Tooth Fairy to do something else beside rape?
We'll all feel sick for a very long time.
Will decides he'll use himself as bait to try to catch the Tooth Fairy. He visits Freddie Lounds for a front-page photo together with identifiable landmarks in the background and tries to rouse the killer's ire with an article implying he's gay.
He's molested all of his male victims.
Oh.
He may be impotent with members of the opposite sex.
Oh, come on, brah. I'm sure he's not gay. I bet he gets, like, tons of action with members of the opposite sex. This charge isn't just them talking to the Tooth Fairy like they were on Xbox Live. Dr. Bloom assumes
Oh,
it's a
this is gonna be
specific
funny.
insecurity.
He put the shorts on Charles Leeds after he was dead. I believe he did this to make sure we wouldn't think he was gay.
After the issue goes out, Will wanders around the area, hoping the Tooth Fairy will try to jump him. Awesome shots here with this exterior setting, but the only person they wind up catching is an innocent jogger, who's very confused
hey,
by
man.
what's happening.
What you moving in slow motion for, man? I'm being mugged.
The real Tooth Fairy is in Chicago kidnapping Freddie Lounds, and he lifts clean off the ground in
Ooh,
an impressive
shit.
feat of strength. Dude must be on that Michael Myers regiment. Lounds wakes up in an eclectic living room and is so scared to look at his kidnapper that he keeps his eyes closed even after his blindfold is removed. It's a thematic contrast
Oh,
to Will's
God.
willingness to see through the eyes of a murderer, and also works as fun inadvertent foreshadowing for actor Stephen Lang, who would go on to play the blind man in the Don't Breathe movies. I still
Oh,
can't
that's
believe
actually
this
pretty
goofy
cool.
asshole wound up playing characters that are so fucking terrifying. How is this the same person? When he finally opens his eyes, Lounds is greeted by a sight he doesn't want to see.
Well, here I
You have pantyhose on your head.
1 hour in, we finally get to see the Tooth Fairy, or as he prefers to be called.
The great red dragon.
While it's mentioned here as brief, William Blake's painting is a much bigger part in the original novel. We'll see that more when Ray Fiennes plays the character in the 2002 adaptation Red Dragon. Manhunter was
Okay, that's
also
probably
supposed to be titled
yeah,
Red
that's
Dragon,
gonna
like
be
its
pretty
source
good.
material, but producer Dino De Laurentiis allegedly changed it after his similarly titled Year of the Dragon bombed at the box office. Not everyone
Damn.
liked the title change.
Manhunter sounds like, I don't know, It's a very cheesy title in many ways.
The Tooth Fairy's mad that Lowndes insinuated he's gay, so he forces his captive to record a message denouncing the article and warning Will Graham that he's next. Then the killer dons a set of fake teeth and bites into Freddy's face, revealing that those bite marks they've been gathering are all for naught. Freddy's fate is shown the next morning when a security guard witnesses this nightmare of a jackass stunt. Lowndes dies from his burns later in the hospital, adding another notch to the Tooth Fairy's belt. Crawford informs Will that the team's figured out what Lecter's message was. Will's home address, along with a chilling instruction.
Save yourself, kill them all.
Bet you regret running the ad now, don't you, Will? Molly and Kevin are moved to a safe house where Will's son seems apprehensive about his dad's mental state. He read about his stay in a psychiatric hospital in The Tattler, so Will confronts the problem head-on with a serial IO one-on-one. Will tells his son about Hannibal Lecter, a famous psychiatrist who Will consulted during a previous case. While talking to him, Graham figured out that Lecter was the man he was looking for, a killer who murdered several of his college girl therapy clients. When Will discovered this, Lecter nearly killed him, scarring him physically and mentally. Will explains that he had to take time to get his head right, and that there's nothing wrong with that. I adore this scene, because it cements Will Graham as a noble character and a positive male role model. The detective who thinks like a serial killer is a common character archetype, but they're usually jaded and mean, oftentimes absent fathers and withholding husbands. This version of Will Graham is a tortured soul, but above all is a good man. He just knows he's great at his job, which is why he can't help but take on the case. He might be the only one who can bring down this monster.
Weirdly, it's like that trope of someone that retires, grows a beard, and lives out in the mountains. It's like I may be the best at that damn job, but I don't want to do it. I just want to live my life and raise my family. But you're the only one that can do this job. Do it, and we'll never call on you again. You called on me last week. I'm sorry, but we all know that's how it happens. I had to laugh.
It's gotta stop.
At the same time, Will is tender and apologetic towards his wife and emotionally honest with his son.
You and Mom came to see me in the hospital, and that helped a lot. But after my body got okay, I still had his thoughts going around in my head. And a doctor friend of mine, Dr. Bloom, asked me to get some help.
Movie's a little soft.
His perspective on mental health also gives him a more nuanced understanding of the killer he's trying to track down.
My heart bleeds for him as a child. Someone took a kid and manufactured a monster. At the same time, as an adult, he's irredeemable.
We take a break from Will being a good dad to follow the Tooth Fairy, who in his civilian life is a man named Francis Dollarhide. Dollarhide works in a film lab where he's markedly less confident, partially due to his cleft palate. A technician named Reva doesn't notice, though, because she's blind, prompting Dollarhide to try his hand at asking her out.
Ride with me. It would be because I would like you to.
It's a little stiff, but Reba likes his forwardness, so she agrees. Already, you're worried about this poor woman, and even more so when Francis says he wants to make a surprise stop. It turns out he takes her to pet a tiger? What the fuck? Why didn't anyone say the Tooth Fairy got mad game? Seriously, dude takes a chick to meet a real motherfucking tiger on their first date? How are any of us supposed to compare to that? You're raising the bar too high, Tooth Fairy. We don't all have exotic animal...
By the way, what's so wrong with his cleft palate? I mean, he can talk apparently just fine. So it's not stopping him from speaking. Other than looking a little off, that's it. That's literally it.
Hookups or whatever's going on here. Production brought in a real-ass tiger for this scene from a local Atlanta zoo. It was awake but anesthetized, obviously. And actress Joan Allen was truly moved by being able to touch it. Allen puts in a great performance as Reva. To prepare for the role, she researched at a New York school for the blind and practiced doing things blindfolded. Francis takes Reva home, where he reviews a video of the next family he plans to kill without his sightless spit-swapping partner ever knowing. They wind up going to bed together, and the intimate experience moves the killer, overwhelming him with emotion at the feeling of someone touching his lips. Dollarhide is played by Tom Noonan, who prepared for scenes by sitting alone in the dark. He also kept separate from the rest of the cast.
Hey, maybe this is actually be a good thing for him. He's finally just getting some emotional affection, so now he doesn't have to go out and kill families. Now, of course, that's not going to stop him.
Until their characters met, meaning he and Will Peterson didn't meet until the final night of production.
We went out to breakfast, and we sat and had pancakes. And he was just this lovely, sweet man.
His performance is a highlight of the film. Noonan provides a haunting presence and an imposing size, standing 6'5". While the new sun rises over this fledgling romance, Will Graham is still trying to find his man. He thankfully calls up Handy Boy again, letting this movie get coxed up one last time. Lecter brings up an incident where Will shot and killed a murderer named Garrett Jacob Hobbs. He accuses Will of enjoying the kill and waxes philosophical about the pleasure of taking a life.
It feels good, Will, because God has power. And if one does what God does enough times, one will become as God is.
This tidbit inspires Will to revisit the crime scene, this time fully placing himself in the mindset of the murderer.
I step into the room. I see you there. And I see me desired by you.
It's a wonderfully surreal sequence, akin to NBC's handling of the character nearly 3 decades later. We'll better get a move on, though, because Dollarhide's Red Dragon is beginning to stir. He waits outside Reba's house to surprise her, where he sees her getting face rubs from their co-worker Ralph, and that gets him void your car warranty angry. This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie, devoid of dialogue and playing out almost like a music video for the song Strong As I Am by the Prime Movers. I've been listening to that thing on repeat for the past few weeks. Turns out Francis is just overly paranoid. Who'd have guessed? Because Ralph wasn't making out with Reba, he was picking a piece of pollen off her face. But it's too late for Dollarhide. He slips back into old habits. Really? He approaches Ralph as he's leaving and guns the poor guy down in Reba's front yard. He then makes his way inside, where he announces that Dollarhide is now forever dollar hidden away.
Francis is gone forever.
Will's building a better profile of the Tooth Fairy, but he's still at a loss for how he chooses his victims. With the full moon already in the sky, Crawford thinks another round of murders is inevitable, but Will suddenly notices some things on the tapes he's watching. The killer operated based on information that wouldn't have been knowable from the outside, like bringing that bolt cutter for an interior padlock. As the synthy soundtrack swells, Graham realizes the Tooth Fairy must have watched these very same home videos.
I've seen these films.
All right.
Haven't you, my man?
It's another incredible scene thanks to Peterson's performance and the track Graham's Theme by composer Michel Rubini. It reminds me of Duran Duran's Ordinary World. This climactic moment took dozens of takes, reportedly as many as 40.
Bill was so fatigued in doing this over and over again that in the end, he was himself. You know, it was a very truthful way of saying the line.
Man was such an obsessive director, he was adjusting the film's audio mix down to the day of its premiere. He was particular about everything, even the ties the background actors wore.
What is different about this?
The ties.
The ties.
In an earlier scene, Man had crew members at the hotel across the street ride the elevators at exactly the right time to get the lights he wanted in the background of the shot. His crew couldn't always keep up with his demands, which would come to a head near the end of production.
He's the kind of director, though, he could shoot like 20 hours a day and sleep 4 hours and come back and shoot. I mean, you know, crew members were like keeling over left and right.
They figure out that both families had their home videos processed at Gateway Labs in St. Louis, which is where Francis Dollarhide works. They hop on a plane to Missouri, and Will plays a game of driver's license Guess Who with St. Louis PD Lieutenant Fisk. Fisk is played by Frankie Faison, who I best know as the opportunistic Burrell from The Wire. We'll be seeing him a bunch in the Hopkinsverse movies as Hannibal Lecter's orderly Barney. Fisk matches Dollarhide with a physical description of the killer, although his driver's license photo looks more Zordon than Zodiac. The police race to Dollarhide's house, looking like they're speeding to a Santa Carla cliffside. Will advises them to turn off their headlights to mask their approach, which turns out to be a bad idea since both cars crash almost immediately. What the fuck happened there? Did y'all hit a banana peel or something? Refusing to wait for backup, Will charges forward like the loose cannon he is, hoping to stop Dollarhide from claiming another victim. The killer has brought Reba to his home, where he's confused her senses by blaring the psychedelic hit In the Garden of Eden by Iron Butterfly. An 8-minute cutdown of the song plays as Will heads towards them, and reaches its climax as he slow motion crashes through a window. It's completely badass. Francis is a hulking man though, so he catches Will and throws him into a nearby fridge. Then he, alright, never mind, I guess Will's done for now. Tom Noonan had a pretty intense on-set workout so he could manhandle a Manhunter.
I was doing like 50 push-ups between each take, like doing take after take after take.
Arming himself with a shotgun, Dollarhide kicks his way into the living room and promptly wastes one cop trying to hold him at gunpoint. His buddy manages to get off a couple of shots before Dollarhide sends him flying down the stairs with another shotgun blast.
Damn, that's gotta suck. Get right back. And we're back. Let's finish this.
The killer doubles back into the kitchen to finish off Will, but it's gonna take more than an icebox to take down this ice-cold agent. Will manages to gun down Dollarhide during a choppy, jump cut-filled shootout. The killer dies in a pool of his own blood. It's spread referencing the wings of the dragon he was so obsessed with. This climactic shootout is a shift to action that might feel a little janky, what with all the jump cuts and blood spurts. But that's because by the time they shot it, most of the crew had already left production, including the entire special effects team.
Yeah, everybody left. The crew was all leaving.
Oh my god.
They were burned out.
Man had his remaining crew simulate blood splatters by blowing ketchup through hoses, and bullet impacts by straight up throwing glass jars around on set, one of which left a shard embedded in Peterson's thigh. He had to go get stitches at a hospital before returning to finish the shoot. And if it seems like an abrupt end to the killer, that's because it kind of is. In the book, Dollarhide's kidnapping of Reba is only the first step in a much more extensive endgame, which we'll get to see when we cover Red Dragon. The movie ends a short time later in a gratefully happy ending, with Will Graham enjoying his wife, his son, and his short shorts on the beach. How many men and women were hunted down and killed? Let's find out and blast our way to the numbers!
Oh, here we go. No, you gotta remember, he was handling that truck with one hand thing. That brings me back to the first
10 people died in Manhunter, since I didn't count the Jacobys due to lack of bloody crime scene. The victims I counted consisted of 9 men and 1 woman, giving us a very blue dragon pie chart. We've seen this count and gender breakdown in 3 other movies on this show: Leprechaun in the Hood, Terror Train, and Tammy and the T-Rex.
Oh.
Man, that movie was fun. And with a runtime of 120 minutes, Manhunter had a kill on average every 12 minutes even. I'll give the Golden Chainsaw for coolest kill to Freddie Lowndes. The sequence leading up to it is the scariest part of this not-quite horror movie, and the flaming wheelchair kill is disturbing and, frankly, just looks really cool. Donation for lamest kill will go to that first policeman Dollarhide shoots. Why was he just standing there? Shoot! And that's it! Manhunter was released in 1986 and bombed both with critics and at the box office. It's since developed a cult following, but is nowhere near as popular as The Silence of the Lambs, which I'll be looking at next week. Until then, I'm James A. Janice. This has been the Kill Count.
On the next Kill Count.
Hello.
Well, yeah, you already said what it's gonna be. So we'll just go ahead and take this for an outro. Well, thank you everyone for joining me in today's video. I hope you enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below. And I'll see you folks next time when we flick on. Peace out.